Well, hey, ladies and gents, one last clip. You're almost there. In this clip, we're going to combine the last two tissue types. It's muscle and nervous tissue. This is a lot shorter, so we'll be able to get through this pretty quickly. So, muscle is pretty straightforward. It does one thing: it contracts, it shortens. Okay. Now, there are different types of muscle doing slightly different types of work, but that's what we got. We got muscle that's contracting. All right, skeletal muscle is the first type of muscle we'll look at. This is what we typically think of when we think of muscle. Skeletal muscle is so named because it attaches to the skeleton, generally speaking. Okay, so muscles will attach to the skeleton, and then what they'll do when they contract is either move the skeleton, move bone, or there are some muscles that contract the skin, and when they do that, it allows you to move the skin. Okay, now muscle cells are embedded with all sorts of connective tissue. So if we look at this cross section of muscle, you'll see the muscle fibers, those are the individual muscle cells, and it's wrapped in all this connective tissue. And then what happens again is that dense fibrous connective tissue extends down beyond the muscle and then attaches to bone. Now, if we look at muscle under the microscope, you'll see a couple of prominent features. One is that it's striated. Okay, so the striations are stripes. When we get into the muscles and studying them, we'll see why those stripes exist. But just for now, know that muscle is striated. You can also see that it's multinucleate, right? So this is a single muscle cell. Each stripe or band is a muscle cell, and it has multiple nuclei. So striated muscles skeletal muscles are multinucleate. We also say it's voluntary. If it's voluntary, that means you decide when it contracts. Okay, so skeletal muscle, it's striated, it's voluntary, and it's multinucleate. It has multiple nuclei. Smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is so named because it lacks those striations. Okay, so if we look at the microscopic image of smooth muscle, we see that it doesn't have any stripes or striations, so it's non-striated. Additionally, it has sort of a tapered shape. It's wider in the middle and narrower at the ends. And this type of muscle is involuntary. That means you don't have conscious control over it, right? So, like the lining of your blood vessels, you don't decide, I'm going to dilate my blood vessels right now. Okay. Or smooth muscle lines some of your gut organs, like your stomach or your intestines. You don't decide when your intestines contract. You don't decide when your stomach contracts. So they're all involuntary. Now, where do we find smooth muscles? Smooth muscles line hollow organs. Hollow organs have stuff travel through them, right? And smooth muscle can contract to move stuff through those organs. So your digestive system, in essence, is sort of a 30-foot long tube that carries stuff from mouth to anus. And it performs contractions to help propel that stuff through the tube. Okay. Now, this action of waves of contraction is referred to as peristalsis. So peristalsis is a wave of contraction that travels through the muscle. So basically what happens is you can have something pass through it, it stretches, and then that stimulates a contraction. Then something passes a little further, it stretches, stimulates contraction. So you can push things through these organs. Okay. So smooth muscle, again, it's non-striated, it's involuntary, it's tapered shape. It's got a tapered shape. Oh, and they're uninucleate. They have just one nucleus. Okay, the last type of muscle we'll look at is cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle you only find in the thumb. I'm kidding. It's just in the heart, right? You only find cardiac muscle in the heart. Now, cardiac muscle you can see from the microscope or the microscopic image. It's striated, so it has stripes. Cardiac muscle is branched. So if you look at the illustration there, rather than being in parallel bands, it's branched like that. And then it also has these little walls that are called intercalated discs. So if you look at the microscope image, it's just like a little thin line. Now, in reality, intercalated discs have holes in them, so they allow materials to travel through them more quickly. What this does is it allows electrical signals to travel through the heart rapidly, so your heart can boom, 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 have the chambers contract in a really coordinated fashion. Your heart will beat 60, 80 times a minute. And if it's going to be doing that for every minute of your life, you want that muscle to be as efficient as possible. So to help the electrical signals travel through the heart as quickly as possible to make synchronous contraction possible, you have the branched muscle fibers and then these intercalated discs that allow the rapid movement of ions through cells. And again, pretty straightforward function. that heart's going to pump some blood. Okay. Let's see. The last type of tissue we'll look at is nervous tissue. Now, nervous tissue can make you feel nervous in addition to other things. But the basic function of the nervous system is to send and receive electrical impulses. So what it does is it allows for communication between parts of the body in fractions of a second, in thousandths of a second. So it's really rapid movement of signals so you can react very quickly to the environment. Now, there are two types of broad categories of cells in nervous tissue. The first is the neurons. The neurons are sort of the stars of the show, right? The neurons are the cells that actually send and receive the electrical signals. So the neurons are the deciders. The neurons are the communicators. So they, again, can very rapidly send electrical impulses all over the body. Okay. Now, neurons are certainly important. You guys know at this point they can last a lifetime, but they need a supporting crew, right? So the support staff for the neurons, those are the neuroglia. So the neuroglia help in different ways, right? They can protect the neurons. They can physically hold them in place. They can repair damaged structures within the neurons or structures that have begun to age out, and then they can sort of transfer nutrients to the neurons. So the neuroglial cells support the neurons in nervous tissue. All right, that takes us through it. If you would, take a little bit of time, a few minutes to summarize the big ideas. So then when you go to review, you start with the summary. That sort of gives you the big picture, and then you add the facts or the details to that. All right, thanks a lot for your efforts. We'll see you guys later.